My name is Adrienne Refutation, and I am refuting the claim made by Jocelyn Rodriguez that global warming is a threat. Her secondary claims were that global warming affects human health, harms wildlife, and causes extreme weather that can lead to natural disasters. So my response to the advocate's first point that global warming affects human health, in her speech she stated that meteorologist Greg Carbon said heat waves are increasing and are one aspect of climate change you can point to. But according to Dr. Crouch from the National Climatic Data Center, states heat waves are consistent with what we'd expect in a warming climate, but it's hard to quantify any effect that climate change might have on a single heat wave or a single event, which leads to my second point. The advocate stated that a heat wave in London caused 650 deaths, but according to Ben Armstrong, an epidemiological statistician, he reports that the excess is likely to have been among people who would have died a few weeks later, and it was overwhelmingly among the elderly as well. And my advocate assumes that ground level ozone is an unregulated compound. However, under the Clean Air Act, the EPA has established health and environmentally protected standards for the air we breathe, as well as encouraging public service announcements that advocate voluntary efforts such as recycling, planting more trees, and carpooling. Responding to the secondary point that global warming harms wildlife, the advocate states that polar bears are swimming long distances to get to ground, which causes suffering, but according to the National Geographic, they are very strong swimmers, and the large front paws, which they use to paddle with, are slightly webbed. And like most animals that hunt, they are usually seen following their prey, which is seals, for long distances. And my advocate also mentions that acidic oceans are one of the causes for coral reef decline. However, overfishing and regular pollution cause more decline of coral reefs. Overfishing is already damaging reefs worldwide and is set to double over the next few decades due to high consumptions of fish and fish products. And the fact that a lot of people and poor countries such as Indonesia and the Philippines rely on coral reefs doesn't further the argument that it harms wildlife. Responding to the third point that global warming causes extreme weather changes, which lead to natural disasters. Natural disasters occur whether or not global warming happens. Hurricanes will still hit the coastlines, tsunamis will still rock the shores, and fires will still burn in cities like Los Angeles and areas around the world. And wildfires and heat waves being connected to global warming run on assumption and speculation. There are many reasons why wildfires and heat waves occur, such as humidity ranges, winter temperature, and other natural disasters and other causes. And while Hurricane Sandy was one of the deadliest and costliest storms, several researchers suggested that the geography of New York made it more susceptible to storm surges. The long and narrow shape of Long Island Sound helped to channel the storm surge and make it bigger. Additionally, areas like Battery Park were built from landfills and thus are low-lying and flat. So Sandy wasn't devastating because of climate change or because of the sea level being 1 foot higher than it would be previously. It was devastating because of the geography of the area and the fact that Long Island is flat and low-lying and is just susceptible to anything. In conclusion, global warming is a threat, but it's not as dire as it was made out to be in the Claims of Fact speech. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
All right, you laid out the secondary claims pretty clearly. On the first point, you basically suggest that the relationship between global warming and the heat waves is minimal at best. You had piece of information, a piece of evidence that said that it's difficult to quantify any relationship. I thought that that was good. The second point, in essence, tries to diminish the importance of those deaths by suggesting that worst case scenario, it accelerated the deaths that were already likely to occur, as opposed to causing the deaths of people who would likely have been fine had there not been this heat wave thing. It's a reasonable press to make. I'm not sure that it's all that convincing that we don't have anything to worry about as a consequence. I thought the better argument was the challenge to the relationship between heat waves and global warming. I think we needed to know, for instance, have there been a greater number of heat waves as a result of global warming? Is there any way to document the consistency? Have there been a change in the pattern of heat waves? That seems to be the inference that the anthropogenic global warming community seems to believe in. So what's their proof? And that's where I think that there's a little bit of a failing, because you need to not only present your counter evidence, but you need to contrast it a little bit to the evidence that was presented by the advocates. How does Dr. Crouch's opinion, for instance, measure up against the opinion of the evidence that the advocate presented? That would have been helpful. The argument that the EPA has regulatory possibilities and encourages doing all these other kinds of things, that's a good general claim. Why it applies to this argument in particular is not quite clear to me. The wildlife argument, I think you had pretty good first response on the polar bear thing, the arguing, look, the idea that polar bears are going to drown because they have to swim further seems to run counterintuitive to their ability to swim, and that they mostly follow their prey, and that's why they're swimming rather than anything else. You've got kind of a combination of diminishing the argument because they are strong swimmers, and arguing that there's some other causality for them swimming that is not related to global warming. I think that part needed to be a little bit stronger. The coral reef argument, on the other hand, was much clearer that you're making a counterclaim here on causality, and you explain that pretty well. On the argument about the weather having devastating effects, it's very generic information at the beginning. The strongest argument was your explanation about Hurricane Sandy, suggesting that all of the problems that are being attributed to Sandy as being particularly devastating are not a result of global warming, not a result of changes in the ocean, but rather all primarily having to do with the geography of the area. I thought that was pretty effective. All right, thank you.